Hello my friends, the situation for Russia, for Putin personally, is getting out of hand because Ukraine with its long-range strikes is capable to terrorize Russian military, Russian oil sector. Every night Ukraine launches at least 200 of the drones and even missiles. Yes, the last night Ukraine sent FP5 missiles to hit Russian infrastructure. Russians report that 4 out of 5 missiles were shot down, but each missile is capable to carry 1 ton of TNT, which could be devastating for any sort of the Russian enterprise, whether it's connected to military or oil. And speaking about FP5, recently we see a huge upgrade in precision of those missiles. Also, they're less vulnerable for the Russian air defense. Well, Russian air defense is suffering, we know it. Ukraine continued to hit Russian Buk air defense systems, S-300, Tor air defense systems. Almost every day Ukraine defenders publishes this information with those videos, and I'm telling about it on my channel constantly. But for me it's getting hard to put everything all in one video, not to make it crazy long because of the number of those strikes. And I think now just people are getting overwhelmed with this information, also the number of the Russian refineries, oil ports, oil storages, and even Putin himself, he understands that. And he dig himself into several of the bunkers, allegedly in Krasnodarsky Krai. He is speaking with just few of the people from his circle. He's recording some of the videos with his propaganda, which are allegedly dated for specific date but were recorded before. I wouldn't be surprised even if Putin recorded the video of him appearing on parade on the Red Square on May the 9th, but he will not appear there live. It could be like that, and Russians may explain, I mean Russian FSB or SSO, this the internal security service of president, it might explain that because of the threat from Ukraine, we pre-recorded the event and you'll not see Putin live on your screens, but it's the recorded video, or maybe they may not even tell about this fact. But what is interesting that this entire Russian regime and Putin personally, they're scared. They're scared of the possible Ukrainian strike in Moscow, and Ukraine day after day shows that it is capable to reach the capital city. Yeah, the previous night one of the Ukrainian drones was intercepted by the Russian electronic warfare. It went just to several-story residential building. But also Ukraine might launch many of the drones, and Ukraine finally might penetrate the Russian air defense layers, and Ukraine already showed it with the spider web operation, for example, when the attack on the multiple Russian military airfields happened not with the use of FP5, Flamingo missiles, ATACMS missiles, but those were small drones which were launched from the trucks. And the same scenario could be applied for military parade of the Russian Federation, which was partially degraded because the vehicles will not appear there. It's already itself, this fact, is the humiliation of the Russian army, that they ask Ukraine for the ceasefire, so they ask so-called Nazis, as they call Ukrainians, to not share that day to make Russian propaganda happy, because it's their main day if we speak about this entire Russian world or Russian peace. Some people say different names for it, but you understand, yeah, for Russia to be happy with its parade, which plays a key role in brainwashing Russian society. If for the other nations this day is the day of sorrow and remembering of the sacrifice, for Russians is the victory. We can repeat. It is happening almost every year since Putin changed the vector of the development of the Russian Federation, and it's getting more crazier and crazier. And for this year, Russia will block internet access. There are already some of the disturbances, even with internal connection with the Wi-Fi or LAN cables, so users in their homes cannot access internet fully. There is some white list of the websites which they may access, or sometimes there are reports that internet is not working at all, and the same applies also for mobile connection. LTE, 4G, 5G, 3G, it is not accessible in those days for Russia. And Putin, by the way, according to the article that yesterday was published by CNN, and I told about it in my video, my last video, I suggest you to watch it too. My friends, just a short break. Please support my channel with your like and your subscription. Both of those two actions, they're for free. They will cost you nothing, just few milliseconds of your time. Just press like and subscribe for the channel. It really helps a lot to propel the channel in algorithms. Thank you so much. And also, if you have this opportunity, you may support my job on Patreon and also membership of the channel by pressing button join, and the link for my Patreon is in the video description below. So that is of course financial support, but that is how you employ me here filming videos for you almost every day. So thank you guys for your kind support. Without your support I would be working somewhere and not be capable to film videos for you, but you make it happen. Thank you so much from me and also from my family. Guys, you are awesome. Let's continue with the video. So Putin restricts everyone who approaches him in some of the conversation, in some of the negotiations, meetings. Everyone should give up their phones or any sort of the gadgets connected to internet, because Putin is afraid. He is afraid of the possible assassination. Well, in an article they say about Shoigu, who might plan this stuff, but also I heard the opinion that the Russian SSO, so the service security of the Russian president, they might partially take the control over Russian regime by delivering this information of the potential threat for Putin directly, for him to listen just this circle of not even FSB, but security officers of the Putin's security. So they like brainwashed him with those threats, and Putin believed them because he is not speaking with anyone else. They're just limited conversations. The activity of the Putin on TV dropped down significantly. He even canceled his address to the Assembly of the Russian Federation, which is actually mandatory. It's like the address in the Congress for the United States president, which I think happened 1 month ago, where Donald Trump was saying we are winning, 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 we're tired of winning. Yeah, we see how they win in Iran, but that's the topic of the different video. In this one we are with you reviewing potential theories of what is happening in Russia of nowadays. And those theories are based on the facts of Putin's isolation and Putin's inability to control the situation in Russia already, in the Russian economy, and also on the front line. And also the huge drop of the support of Putin by Russians themselves. Even the Russian VTSIOM is the polling service which is affiliated with the Russian government. Even they stopped publishing the statistics, but according to their latest one, which was published the last week, the rating of Putin dropped by 5%. Just imagine, 5%. Yes, still it's like majority, but the drop was 5%. And if they say that it's 5%, guys, believe me, it's more than that. And the trend is visible. Yeah, we don't have lots of the information coming about the particular Russian president rating, but this dynamics is going down, going lower and lower. The trust of people and the general support, not just of the special military operation which Russia started, but Putin's policy personally. And I see more and more critics. In my videos I haven't mentioned the real beef between Russian propaganda and one of the main Russian influencers, Victoria Bonia, who is not a Russian oppositioner. Video which went absolutely viral on blocked Instagram, which is only accessible via VPN in Russia, but nevertheless it got millions of views. I think now it's 50 million, something like that. Well, in that video Victoria addressed the main thing is the blocking of internet websites, that they're very, very restricted nowadays in Russia, and it should not be like that, because the freedom it doesn't exist in Russia any longer. And she accused the Russian government openly. So the initial reaction of the Russian propaganda was like to shut her up. They cursed her, calling her bitch, and so those names, yeah. And in usual scenario it would work, but here somehow it didn't, and people started to watch that video even more and more, and they mostly supported Bonia, Victoria Bonia. Even those people who usually support Russian propaganda, brainwashed people. So Victoria triggered huge problems within this Russian society, and there are problems for every group of people. For students, the problem is not to get conscripted for the war, for them to fail with their studies and go to fight in Ukraine. For average Russian worker, the problem is with economy, because inflation is record high, and even though the salary is more or less stable, but there are less goods which Russians may afford for the same salary. Even the Russian soldiers who signed the contracts with the Russian army, their millions of rubles are not the same as they were a couple of years ago. And this stagflation of Russian economy, it goes full in already for a long time, and it deteriorates. Even the head of the Russian Central Bank, Nabiullina, criticizes, well, not criticizes, but she says about the problems in the Russian economy, especially connected with the working force. There is less working force than needed. It has never been like that in Russia. Russians continue to leave Russia. Also, they're being drafted to the war. So the issue with the workforce is definitely huge, and Russia cannot compensate it even with immigration waves which are coming from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. It's not enough for the qualified employees who would propel Russian economy further, but they're usually leaving. Those engineers, IT specialists, people connected to science, they're usually out of Russia because it's impossible to realize their potential in Russia. It was like that even before, but now when even internet sometimes is not accessible, like what's the ground for those specialists? Russia is turning full scale to North Korea just because Putin afraid for his own personal life. And his life is directly connected to power. So when he loses the power, he'll be blamed for everything, for this war, for Russian economy, for lots of those deaths, 1 and 2 million, well, not KA, but KA plus wounded soldiers who are not able to fight or who receive this compensation and their relatives, and this drags Russian economy down even more. Because just imagine 40% of economy is working to produce something that is being flatlined in Ukraine, I mean military sector. Every tank, every BMP, all of that. Plus, they have to pay for the fallen soldiers' families or for the medical treatment of those who were wounded. And coming back to this influencer Victoria Bonia, so because Russian propaganda couldn't cope with attacking her, they asked her to participate. And actually, partially, Russian propaganda won this battle, small battle between Victoria and Solovyov, who was a representative of the Russian propaganda by the time, who was initially attacking her. But later on, he called her on a show and said, "Sorry, Victoria, we should work together of how to avoid those restrictions. We're going to explain you why those were implemented. Don't be so rude for Russian regime." So they communicated, and Victoria Bonia, she bowed for the Russian propaganda, but now the thing is not about her any longer. She triggered every problem of every Russian in Russia. With the pensions, as I told you, with the conscription service to the Russian army, for those people in Siberia whose livestock was just confiscated and cancelled, for people whose houses were flooded in Dagestan, for example, and the Russian propaganda was just silent about that one. So there are lots of the problems in Russia for every Russian. But the initial thing why those problems exist, and Tuapse is burning, is the Russian regime and the war started in Ukraine. Sadly, many of the Russians, they still don't understand that, and they blame Ukraine for their problems. However, Victoria Bonia, in her address to the nation, she told the real cause of that stuff, and the cause is the Russian regime itself, and many of the Russians, they agree on that. So there is completely brainwashed people in Russia who trust Putin unconditionally. But now I see more and more people, they start to understand what is really happening. And the more voices there are in Russia, the more people will understand that. And those voices are not necessarily coming from, liberal community or Russian opposition. No, those voices start to come from the Russian Z channels, Z military bloggers, influencers who were previously praising Russia and Putin's regime. I already told you about Ilya Remeslo, who miraculously was released from mental institution. I think that the part of the Russian elite, they allow it to happen. So Putin, yes, he is kind of powerful, he has his personalist dictatorship in Russia, but he's not controlling power by 100%. I think that there's the part of elite that wants the war to be over and return to the previous status quo. I wouldn't say pay reparations, but maybe to get rid of Donbass, keep Crimea, they think like that, and to blame Putin for everything that happened. Then de facto they did it themselves altogether. And by the way, then people say, it's all about Putin, it's all about Putin. Putin started the war in Ukraine. Yes, but it's not Putin who himself goes with the automatic rifle AK-74 or 47 to Ukraine, driving those all-terrain vehicles, motorcycles, flying FPV drones. So it's Russia and Russians. And Russians, they still mainly support Putin's regime. Well, around 20% of Russians, they were always in opposition. They never really supported Putin. Most of them, by the way, they live in Moscow or St. Petersburg, in those big cities, where people live, I would say, more or less okay-ish. nowadays compared to what is happening in Russian villages, small towns, or even more or less bigger towns. But there, miraculously, people, they do support Putin. That's what I don't understand, but it is happening. So we see the first changes, and I feel this wind of change, not here in the forest, of course, but I feel it monitoring Russian Z channels, monitoring Russian official propaganda, monitoring those conflicts. So it has never been like that. Criticizing of Putin has never been openly allowed, but now it is out there, and it's coming not just from those big influencers like Victoria Bonia, or not from Russian Z propagandists, but also from average Russians. Oh damn, it's too dark, I guess, yeah. So there was the group of women, and to upset, they record the video telling and blaming Russian regime also and Putin for starting the war in Ukraine, and that's why Ukraine had to counterattack with long-range strikes hitting Russian oil, and that's the result not of bad Ukraine, but of bad Putin's policy. Complete failure. And before, I have never seen those videos, guys, especially when they were recorded by Russians and published on Russian media channels. Yeah, still not official Russian propaganda, but it's a huge step. Before, they would have been jailed by Russian regime. But now I don't think that they will be jailed, because there are lots of the videos like that, not just a single one. Many of the Russians record the same stuff, and you cannot jail like every one of those without some sort of the big scandal. So this Russian militant machine, or let's say force apparatus, police, FSB, Putin's private security, they don't know how to react on this wave yet. There were protests before, so they dealt with them, just packing people into the buses. But today's protest, it is happening online. So maybe the only thing they came out with is to block internet access, or to restrict it at least. But it's not working as they wanted, because Russia is now a nation of VPNs. Everyone is using VPN out there, and they cannot block VPNs yet. Yeah, even China can't block all of the VPNs. What about Russia? Yes. So VPNs are officially allowed now by Russian legislation, which gives Russians unique opportunity to still access Telegram, Instagram, TikTok, and many other sources. But officially they're blocked. Yeah, Telegram is not accessible, only from other countries or VPN. But still I see that thousands and thousands of people, even millions of Russians every day, they use Telegram. But for the Russian soldiers on the front lines, if they use Telegram or their command, there is penalty. The Russian army management is against Telegram. Telegram, which helped them a lot. Private chats, it's after all an encrypted service, yeah, the Telegram messenger. Ukraine couldn't get in those chats without deploying its own spies to the groups, no. But Russia canceled it, and this is fantastic. They canceled also Starlink. Now they're forbidden officially. Russians say that those sanctions were introduced on Elon Musk's company just because Elon Musk supplied Ukraine with the Starlinks. But before, there were no restrictions for Russians to use Starlinks. However, with the new Defense Minister Fedorov, everything changed. And Russians were so offended about it, and that Ukraine is using ground drones equipped with the Starlink, long-range drones, that they decided to block Starlink supplies to Russian Federation itself. So there is no perspective for Russia to use that technology. Yes, they sent some of the satellites to the orbit, Russian analog of the Starlink, but with their pace it requires them billions and billions of dollars and almost a decade to come out with some of the alternate solution for Starlink. So what they do is they just put some of the Wi-Fi bridges, basically routers, powerful ones on the trees, on some of the towers. That's how they work with their long-range drones or FPV drones, but the range is pretty limited, and Ukraine, with the help of the electronic warfare, is capable to jam those antennas, or at least to find the location and to eliminate those with the help of the FPV drones. So guys, this year I'm very optimistic about the events happening in Russia, actually in Ukraine as well, on the front lines. Ukraine basically made impossible for Russia to advance very fast, as they did the last year, for example, in Zaporizhia direction. Now it's difficult to foresee any sort of the Russian success for the coming months, even of this year. So the prospect for Russia to reach the goals of the special military operation, it's absent. It is not out there, and even for Russian propaganda, it's understandable, for Russian Z bloggers, the fight isn't going for Malaya Takhmachka. And for Konstantinovka, which Russia is not capable to occupy for more than a year for sure, and that grinds Russian army down with heavy losses, and how to cope with that, no one knows, and mobilization will not help as well. So Russia is digging itself down, but unfortunately, guys, it will take, I guess, a few more years for Russia really to start to disintegrate or collapse, I mean the Russian regime itself at least, but the signs of the future catastrophe, they're already out there. Putin shows them to you on the Russian propaganda TV. Russian Z channels are writing about it. Everything is so pessimistic. Even from the most cheerful guys who praised everything Putin did before, they're now saying that we're fucked. They're saying that it's impossible to achieve what we started, and it's gonna bring the defeat for Russia after all. I'm not saying just about Strelkov. Many of the Russian Z military channels, they're saying about it. And I also think that this year Ukraine will make something like Spiderweb Operation 2.0. I know what it could be. Well, I have some of the thoughts, but I'm not gonna tell them openly here on my channel because I don't want to be a failed prophet, Baba Vanga or something, no. But I think I have an idea of what Ukraine might do this year, and it's gonna be even bigger than the spider web. We'll see. Right, guys. Thank you so much for watching those kind of the videos that I filmed them outside, and please support me on Patreon. The link for it is in the video description below, or on membership of the channel by pressing button join somewhere here or here, you'll see. And that is how you make this content possible, my friends. Thank you so much. Also, don't forget to press like to this video and subscribe for the channel. We are on the road to reach 1 million subscribers, hopefully this year. My friends, love you all. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.